Greetings, family. Welcome to Pan-Africanism Towards Nationhood, building a global Black business pipeline. All right, family, we're here to give you another wonderful show. I'm here with my good brother, Kala Genesis. And family, tonight our topic is European Union pressuring of Africa into renewable energy for climate change with white supremacist policies. And family, this is the Afrikstan Analysis. All right, greetings, Kala. How you feeling, brother?
Greetings, man. Greetings, brother. I'm gonna give you a nice send off tonight, you know?
Yeah, all good. And we don't have to talk about scheduling things like that, but we can always talk and go through certain things. So the topic tonight, what's the base of that topic, and how do you come up with it? Just to be specific and
So
clear.
because right now, right now, uh, black people around the world in America and Africa have bought into this idea of a global citizen. Okay? The global citizen does two things. It allows Europeans and everybody else to be entrenched in Africa, right? At the same time, it basically says that it's getting rid of the idea of the nation state or the border or the idea of the republic. Why? Because that's an impediment to global domination. Okay, so since the post World War II, we had institutions called like the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, and all these other institutions are global institutions that basically have policy, like the International Criminal Court. All these things are basically is how Europeans practice white supremacy under the guise of benevolence and ultra motives. Okay, so what we talk about tonight is this idea that Europeans are now telling Africans what to do with their own countries. So you ask the question: who does Africa belong to? Is Africa part of some world global community, the international community? You know, why is it that the U.S. and those countries are bound to the same rules? Okay, for example, China is the number one gold polluter, but China has a loophole because it's still considered a developing country, so it can pollute, whereas the United States are bound to things like the Paris Accords and stuff like this. Now, people say, "Well, Colin, why are you talking about this tonight? What does that have to do with everything?" It has to do with just like when they talk about the World Population Forum and stuff like this. It has to do with the fact that when you look at it, there's always been this thing called Malthusianism. Okay, a man named Thomas Malthus in the 19th century believed it was debunked many times, but it's still used in many circles that the world's overpopulating and we have to reduce populations and stuff like this. This is why we have birth control in the world. This is why we have abortion. This is why we have all these things because they believe that the world is being overpopulated. What they mean is the world of non-white people are being overpopulating white people. So therefore, how do you stop this? You keep these countries poor and underdeveloped. You look at America, right? America, they call America the big colossus from the north. You look at all the countries that are in Central America, they're impoverished. Okay. Now Japan and these countries didn't follow these things. They have millions and millions of people in these countries, right? And you got countries like Vietnam and countries like things who now have GDPs competing with the Western nations. Now, Africa, because there was all this instability on the continent and dictators and all this stuff like this, and all anytime that an African leader stands up for his people, stands up for Africa, he's deemed as a threat. In other words, basically, his government is no longer called an administration; it's called a regime. See how they changed the words? You know, the Kagame regime. Okay, the Mugabe regime. Not only the fact that these countries were elected by the people, but it's called a regime. That simple name change basically changes the whole dynamic of what you're talking about. Okay, so we're going to get into that tonight, and we're going to talk about this pipeline that Uganda is trying to build from Uganda to the port of in Tanzania. It was originally supposed to go to the new Lamu port Uganda to Kenya, but they rerouted to Tanzania. Okay, Tanzania and Uganda want to export natural gas and create gas and make it their countries energy independent from the West. In other words, basically, this will create economic growth unprecedented. That means basically you cannot build industries without fossil fuels, without coal, without all these things, natural gas. All these things are energy that will make electricity tariffs cheaper and make industries. You can build industries and make Africa a place where you could build power plants, you could build industrial parks and stuff like this. So in other words, Africa is saying that if that's the case, then that means that we don't have to rely on Europeans for imports. We can manufacture our own goods. Now, Europeans don't want that. What they want is Africa to be completely dependent on them for manufactured goods. In other words, basically, the European Union basically is trying to stave off the inevitable. That Africa becomes independent because Africa does not need Europe for anything. Europe is relying on Africa to dump its products on its shores and basically keep the continent poor and stabilized, drain it of it, not just its natural resources, but its human resources. That's what the whole global citizen thing. So you got these African students studying in Europe for 30 years. And then I want to talk about it is if this thing is, and when you see this video we're about to play, you're going to ask yourself this question. If all this is going on, where is the black media at? Where's the black media in the West? If this new Africa video can uncover this, right? Why is it that the so-called Pan-Africanist community and YouTube and everything haven't picked this up? And why are we not talking about this? Why is this not important? Why is it this? The BAIO stands for Black African Infrastructure. A pipeline like this means infrastructure. We emphasize infrastructure. Without infrastructure, you're never going to build a stable, viable society. Okay, you're never going to compete with the rest of the world. So when something like a major infrastructure project comes along, it catches my attention. Okay, you have a pipeline that's going to go, and the Africans have the means to build this pipeline and basically sell its own oil, not just for itself, for its own needs, but to the rest of the world. And so, therefore, here comes the West saying, no, climate change, we got to keep the global. This goes against the agreements signed in the Paris Accords and everything. But here's the thing: they years ago it was called global warming, and then once that was debunked, right? Then they said climate change. And I asked the question: when did this all start? That Europeans and the West was talking about uh, 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 global warming and stuff like that. It happened post World War II when these countries in Asia and Africa began independence. And so, therefore, they pulled the old trick like, oh, the environment, the climate and everything. But that didn't stop them for looting the planet and destroying the planet for hundreds of years. Europeans took millions of human resources out of the African continent. It basically, when they wanted to get rich, and they dumped heroin, opium in China. So when it comes down to these other countries that want to come up and develop, right? Suddenly the rules change. Suddenly there's this big concern about the environment. Suddenly there's a big concern about, oh, what about the environment's going to do? You don't care about any of the environment. If you do, then why is it that the Western countries are participating in the degradation in the Congo, arming rebels and everything? If they were so concerned about the climate, what happened when that oil drilling thing pumped millions of barrels of oil into the Gulf of Mexico? But that was just covered up. So they basically did a settlement of $20 billion and they moved on. Nobody went to jail. Nobody went to anything. But the African countries are not even given a chance to say, look, we're going to drill oil and we're going to do this same things. We're going to basically take care of our energy needs and everything. This idea of renewable energy is going to actually cost more than actual drilling what Africa has in abundance. Natural gas, coal, and oil and fossil fuels, Africa has an abundance. So why is Africa not using these things they have an abundant supplies of electricity? Is because we, as Africans, Black people, signed off on these deals to try to sound like we're being global players. The recent president of the Congo said, you know something? He invited all the people that want to do mining into the Congo. He said, I don't care about the climate or whatever like that. We're going to use these mineral resources to develop our countries. So what you have right now is a battle between the West, who want to keep the status quo, and Africans who want to develop. We saw that with the new dam in Ethiopia, right? Ethiopia completed a 25,000 megawatt dam, right? And Egypt, right, is basically threatening war over this dam because it says it's going to block its access to the Nile River. Okay, because remember, the Nile goes from the south to the north, so the water has to go north. And so they said it's going to put its water supply in peril. Now, Egypt did this by saying that the South Sudan is actually part of Egypt because the British once ruled South Sudan as one state. So therefore, they claim the Nile not based on any historical thing, but the fact that the British once called the region the Egyptian Sudan. So it still basically lays claim to the whole entire Nile River, even the parts that doesn't originate in Sudan, all the way down to Ethiopia. I mean Uganda and Ethiopia, which was never under the Egyptian Sudan state. So this is what we're talking, folks. And the whole thing is this: when we're talking about this, I need people who call themselves Pan Africans to be really on point with this, because we're talking about geopolitics, and geopolitics is very, very important to understanding what we should be our goals and objectives. For example, we just had an election, right? And I didn't say nothing, right? But I didn't hear one peep in the Pan African community about, okay, what's your policy, Stacey Abrams or Raphael Warnock, about the sanctions on Zimbabwe, which basically the West is doubling down on. You want to give white farmers who took the land from black people back land, which they don't even farm; they just own the land. So white people can own land in a black country and everything. And if you dare do anything about it, you're under international sanctions. That question is not being talked about among the black people in power in America, or even in the so-called Pan-African community. No one's. I have yet to hear anybody mention Zimbabwe. The sanctions are still the illegal, racist, white supremacist sanctions on Zimbabwe. It's not happening. So what's going to happen in the future is, if Uganda and Tanzania go along with this pipeline, there may be sanctions on Uganda and Tanzania. So how do we feel? We're going to Tanzania. Some black people are moving there, and it's all right to enjoy the beaches of Zanzibar and everything. But what do we? What is our policy? How do we feel about these things that the United States and the West is doing towards the countries that many of us claim that we want to move to? So that's what I want to start with tonight.
Well, excellent, brother. We are rolling. We are rolling. I want to know what you think of this right here. Whoever this is, Colin Harder. Is this that HC guy, Alcoon? You know, because these guys have like 10 accounts.
I don't know. It's called the Anglo-Egyptian Sudan, something like the Anglo-Egyptian Sudan. Yeah, that's what it was. It was called the Egyptian Sudan. I don't know about Anglo-Egyptian Sudan, but I know it's called the Egyptian Sudan. You know,
Okay,
and
guys.
so therefore that was a territory by the British, and so a lot of Arabs in the Egypt right now still who are Negropeans or Arapeans think they have possession over the Sudan and the Nile because the British conquered it. Okay, so this is what you're talking about. So therefore, you have people in Egypt who are self-exalted. Now, here's another thing: you have a lot of black people who are moving to Egypt. I want to live in Egypt, Cairo. So what happens when the war breaks out between Ethiopia and Egypt? What side do we get on? You know, because the Arab world and the European world is clearly back in Egypt. You know, we don't think about these things when we talk about going to a country. You know, what is the politics of this country? You know, am I going to agree with what's going on here? And so, therefore, this is what I'm talking about tonight. We got black people. We got a couple people on the show that say, "Oh, I live in Egypt. I love it," and everything like that. Okay, well, Egypt is that in a cold war with Ethiopia, and Egypt is also part of the unrest that's going on in Ethiopia right now, and so is the West because they want to shut down that dam. Now that dam has enough electricity to power half the continent. So when Africans are trying to make moves, power moves to free itself, right? We're not even basically smart enough to be on code with that. Do you think electricity has come out of the street? No. Somebody has to build a power plant. People say, "Oh, the bottom line is this: you ain't gonna get so far with a damn solar panel." We need energy like everybody else to power power plants, to power industries, to power our cities in Africa, to make Africa, to give everybody a standard of living. That's what they're talking about in the video. A standard, raise the standard of living of Africans, where everyone has access to energy. Why is it that we're suffering with no electricity on the continent, right? When we got all this abundance of not only fossil fuels, but we got so many different Africa's water potential. The potential of water in Africa could quench the thirst of the world. 5 major rivers, right? Africa's water potential between the Zambezi, the Congo River, and several other rivers in the southern African, the Great Lakes region, and everything. That's enough water. There's enough water, right? And I've had privy to some things years ago, 30 years ago, where they was talking about building a pipeline, right, from the Congo River all the way to the Sahara Desert, to green the Sahara Desert. Well, Gaddafi heard about this, and he drilled for water, and he created aqueducts and greened good parts of Libya and made it viable for farming in the desert. So all this technology is out there to help Africa develop and everything. But we in the West, right, and those of us who are African enthusiasts, we're not talking about these things. Uh, we if we want to help the mother continent, right, we have to start talking about infrastructure. We have to be educated on infrastructure. We got to educate on things. There's no reason for poverty and the level of poverty we see on the African continent. Africa has abundant resources, right? But it's not being used, not being allowed to use, okay, because of the West and people who are leaders who are short-sighted in their thinking. And so, therefore, this is what we're talking about tonight: the use of permaculture. Permaculture is simply using things like irrigation to green the desert. The state of Israel, right? They basically planted millions of trees. So in the Nevada desert that was once desert, they got forests now of trees that grow oranges. There's a technology out there to help the continent grow. And so therefore that's the sort of Africa that we can emigrate to, we can migrate to and build. We cannot go to a place where they're not using proper technology. We're not going to help Africa, and we're not going to help ourselves. So therefore, when we talk about going to Africa, we have to be on a we support permaculture. We support the use of fossil fuels. We support nuclear energy. We support geothermal energy. We support hydro energy. All these things that when people ask you, which you're Pan African, what's your energy policy? Okay, well, I agree with nuclear energy. Okay, Rwanda right now is planning on building a nuclear power plant. Do you think the West likes that? Of course not. You think the West likes the idea of any African country having access to nuclear energy? No, because they figure, oh, if you do that, then one day you're going to start making nuclear weapons. So this is what I'm saying: is Africa is still being indirectly controlled by racists and white supremacists outside of Africa, and they use Africans unwillingly. Because you asked the question, and you're gonna see this video, right? The propaganda of the West is so great that you have Ugandans, right, who are poor, who are against this pipeline because they bought into the propaganda, New World Order, and the globalists, right? So they would rather sit there and have no energy, no electricity, no anything, right, or pay high fuel costs and everything, instead of having abundant of fuel and gas and all this stuff like that they need. They going with this whole environmental stuff. I remember a couple of years ago, I saw this thing where they were saying that elephants more important than people. Just say people, this guy wildlife. They will have, they come out and actually say openly, "Oh, the growth of human beings are a threat to the elephants." Now, I don't know a whole lot in this world, right? But I do think human beings should be valued above elephants. Am I right, Bomani? But these people are so brazen; they will say something like that, and Africans will sit there. Yeah, you're right. We gotta protect the elephants, right? Elephants come and raid the crops, destroy everything. You can't do nothing about it because the elephants are protected, you know. And so these race policies, right? And people don't understand something. All these national parks, right, are an extension of the European power structure. These national parks and all these things that the Europeans put in place, right, impede development, stops roads from connecting cities, whole areas from connecting with each other by roads and railways and stuff like this, because they keep Africa, the infrastructure of Africa, broken and fragmented. So this is why we came up with this so-called Black African, not so-called, but Black African infrastructure. We said we want to make infrastructure the main priority of the Pan African world. Roads, bridges, pipelines, all these things that basically make sure that everybody or have the basics in the modern world, because we cannot keep going on and basically be a continent relying on people to feed us and give us things and things for the future. So this is what we're talking about tonight, and we're going to talk about how sinister these people are. When you see watch this video, you're going to see what is John Kerry doing over there. Right now, President Biden is on a seven-nation tour talking about climate change. He's on a seven-nation. I'll tell you this. They got the perfect person in the office to push this climate change hoax. Okay, last year we had one of the coldest winters we ever had in history. But yet they talk about the climate. See, they don't say global warming anymore. They say climate change. Well, I don't know much, right? But I know it's fall right now. It's soon going to be winter. Isn't that climate change? It's climate changes. So when they talk about climate change, they're not talking about anything other than basically fear mongering and telling black people around the world, you got to keep suffering because the so-called earth is in peril. But they won't give up. They won't say, okay, why don't we basically have a third of the world's industries on the African continent? Why is it that all the industries and everything is always in the north in Europe? Why don't we can make cars cheaper on the African continent? Why don't we basically no? They have all the wealth, the industries, everything on their shores, right? But Africa is just supposed to be a place where they get cheap raw materials and they dump on the continent. Another example is this. Do you know how many black South Sudanese are in Australia right now? You won't think about that. The African population in Australia is exploding. Now, the African population is now, Australia's been overrun by gangs, and they say the African gangs are ruling the country. Now, ask yourself a question. How did the African gang get from South Sudan and Somalia to and Kenya and Nigerian countries to Australia? It's simple. Multinational firms, right, wanted to be in South Sudan drilling oil. South Sudan is known for its oil reserves. So basically, to get those oil reserves, right, you do something that Africans all want: a green card. You give them a green card, and they will give you the keys to the whole country. So therefore, while they're complaining about these Africans in there, no one's saying anything about all these European firms that's in the Congo, that's in South Sudan, that's all over the continent, raping the continent blind and everything. This is what I'm talking about. We're going into the next phase of white supremacy, and we can't even see it. Why? Because it's done under the cloak of globalism, one humanity, borderlessness, all these things that they tell us that's going to help us one day, but it's nearly not helping us. It's basically hurting us. You know, so this is what we're talking about tonight, folks. You know, so this is what we're talking about tonight. This is it's really really bad. We're gonna wait a minute before we play a video. Some more people come in before we play the video, because this video will shock you. It will anger you. If you're a real Pan Africanist or Black nationalist, this move is going to anger you, because you got two strong countries, Uganda, and I have to change my opinion about Museveni. I have to change my opinion. I didn't like him at first and everything, but I see his wisdom. I have to change my opinion. Now that Museveni is making this move, suddenly now there's all this trouble in the Congo. Now the international community, along with sycophants in Africa, are saying that Rwanda and Uganda is behind the unrest in Uganda, in the Congo. All these things. So they basically, if you're out of line, will use that as a pretense to stage a coup and topple you. Now, I've never heard Tanzania being accused of being part of this, right? Stuff like this. So what are they going to do with Tanzania? So this is what's going on the continent, right? Europeans have never given up on Africa. In fact, after independence, so-called independence, right? Europeans doubled down in Africa. They've entrenched themselves in Africa. In fact, after Europeans became more interested in Africa post independence than they were before independence, because they came under the guise of humanitarianism. They came under the guise of we're going to help Africa out. We came into the guise of the global citizen, right, and humanitarian aid and that all stuff like this, and also the things like the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps is an arm of the CIA. The Peace Corps gathers information, and I got proof of this. The Peace Corps gathers information for the CIA so they can profile and do recruiting of people to do their bidding. How do you think they get in, when they get ready to go into Central America, Iran, Contra, and everything? How do you think they're able to make certain contacts, everything? It's a Peace Corps. The Peace Corps will tell you, okay, yeah, this person here, you could talk to him, Jughead. Yeah, Jughead goes too hard, man. I didn't say it like that. Jughead, man, just goes. Jughead has no chill, man. Jughead got no chill. But the whole thing is this, though. I don't even blame the Africans. I blame these Negro Africans, right, who sit online and the only thing they want to do is talk about what Bomani's doing, what Kala Genesis is doing, what the Bag family's doing, and what African Americans and going to Africa is doing. They don't talk about the Europeans that's freaking destroying the continent, and the Arabs that's coming in, and the Lebanese, and everybody else who's raping the continent blind. And right now, man, like I said, these young Africans, man, they're getting tired. They're getting tired, right? They're getting tired of lies. And I can tell my African brothers who are listening to that, join the BAIO, join Brother Bomani, join us right now for real liberation salvation. You have nothing to lose. You have absolutely nothing to lose but your chains. Because these people have not given up. You are never going to see and also we got to stop this idea as Africa the future. Africa's right. Africa's not rising. Africa's in trouble right now. Africa's falling, right? Because you cannot have these policies and then talk on one breath and then talk about Africa rising, Africa's the future. And you don't know nothing about the Europeans and what they're doing or to the continent. It's time for how can we talk about Africa rising when there's a threat of sanctions looming on any country that steps out of line, and we don't even have the power globally. We should be down there marching in D.C. at the EU or whatever, and say, "Yo, lift those sanctions on Zimbabwe or else." There's no European. That's what we mean by African solidarity. Why the Haitians are sitting there under poverty because of France? Because they dared to fight for their liberation. Countries like Grenada was invaded by the United States. With our brother Maurice Bishop down there overthrown and everything. Why do we let this stuff slide? And we're gonna talk about Africa rising, man. Get your coward ass out of here. Africa's gonna rise when the black man worldwide puts his foot down and say Africa for the Africans. As simple as that. If Africa can't be for Africans, then nobody's gonna have it. So this is what we're talking about. I don't play, Kala. We have 3 decades of being tenants, no land. If we ever lose sub-Saharan Africa, we be fit, of course. That's what it is. We are tenants. It's one thing when white people say, "Oh, go back to Africa." Then we go to Africa, we find them there. We find them there having the best of everything. I have reports that white people in the Congo right now living like kings. mining contracts, construction contracts, and everything. You won't see that, right? Because if they make sure, and they're smart enough not to be on goddamn YouTube, because they don't want us finding out that they're over there. They're over there doing big things on the continent, right? While we're sitting in here in America and everything like that, we don't have any. The whites are in the continent on the continent living like kings. You know, the whites in South Africa are causing a lot of problems on the continent. You know, the xenophobia you see in South Africa, the sanctions on Zimbabwe, all the stuff is done by whites who basically act like when the Mandela free. No, white people are white people no matter what. They're trying to protect their, if rightfully so, they're protecting their interests and everything on the African continent, right? That's okay. That's fair enough. But why do I get reports that there's white racists in parts of Angola and Zambia who got military training camps for a coming race war? These are whites that have Portuguese ancestry, Dutch ancestry, everything, who got neo-Nazi groups training camps on the African continent. You know, why is this happening? You know, why is this happening? And so therefore, these people do not want Africa to develop, and they use any excuse why Africa developed. Climate change, that's a new hoax. So the European, the white man could basically drill in the Gulf of Mexico, pollute the Gulf of Mexico, but goddamn, a black man can't build one pipeline to sell his oil and develop his region. Why the hell do they care about what we do on our African continent? That's because we bought into this nonsense about globalism. You know, this nonsense about globalism, one so-called human family. Oh, Kala, race don't exist. You black people in America, y'all so concerned about race. I'm like, "Yeah, shut up, you fool." That's what the Mike Owens said. Oh, why you worry about race so much and everything? Because race is reality. White people are not going to give up that power that they have. They would be committing suicide if they left Africa alone. And the one thing that's threatening is the ideology of Black America and the way we think. That's what they fear because our young Africans are starting to wake up. Why do we have? Why the only thing got to look forward to is a life of poverty all over the continent. People are rising up against the government. I just hope they don't freaking rise up in Ghana against Adu and all these other people because it's not. He's not the problem. It's the West that's the problem. It's our relationship with the West is a problem. That's the real issue in the future. In the future. So, yeah, you ready to play a video, brother?
Yes, playing the video right now.
Watch this, folks. We might have to play it twice, you know.
Over the past few years, calls to switch to renewable energy have become increasingly loud on a global scale. Many influential people support the switch to clean energy because it is widely believed to be the best approach to ensure a healthy, livable planet for present and future generations. On the other side, it is commonly accepted and proven that the burning, extraction, and manufacturing of fossils and their byproducts worsen the health of the Earth by emitting greenhouse gases that cause global warming. Inasmuch as many across the globe have acknowledged global shouts to transition, several factions across Africa, which include key figures and leaders, haven't been so keen on the set trend. This could do in part because for Africa, a new era is only beginning for the oil and gas field, which is on the verge of booming. In about 20 years from now, the continent's energy consumption, which should include fossil fuels, is expected to considerably expand due to fast population growth and rapid urbanization. As a matter of fact, analysis from McKinsey modeling predicts that African energy demand could increase by roughly 30% by 2040, compared to a 10% increase in world energy demand.
Stop. Before you do any holiday shopping this year, you really have to see this. I'm going to show you one simple trick.
Another factor to take into account is the continuous invasion of Ukraine, which has had profound effects on people, society, and the economy in many other nations and industries, with surveys showing that over the last 12 months, gas prices in Europe have climbed by more than 3 times. In addition, the European Commission has stated that it will accelerate the use of renewable energy sources and diversify natural gas supplies in order to make Europe independent from Russian fossil fuels by the year 2030. This absolutely opens doorways and opportunities for African nations that have the resources and facilities to assist meet that demand. For instance, with more than 6.5 billion barrels of crude oil reserves, of which roughly 2.2 billion were recoverable as of 2015, Uganda envisaged constructing a refinery in the western region to satisfy local and regional consumption and export the remaining barrels via pipeline to the coast of the Indian Ocean. The plan was to work with Kenya to construct a crude oil pipeline that would run from Uganda to Lamu, a port in Kenya. However, with the backing of the French oil company Total Energies, parallel negotiations with Tanzania concerning a quicker and safer route to the port of Tango were motivated by worries about cost and security. Uganda formally picked the Tanzanian route for its crude oil in April 2016 at the 13th Northern Corridor Heads of State Summit in Kampala, instead of the Mombasa or Lamu route from Kenya.
This pipeline project can be a core of bigger developments.
The East African Crude Oil Pipeline Project, also known as the Uganda-Tanzania Crude Oil Pipeline, is a 1,443-kilometer pipeline that will connect Kabale in the Hoima district of Uganda with the Chongoleani Peninsula near Tanga Port in Tanzania. The pipeline, whose construction will start in a few months, will be a subterranean, thermally insulated 24-inch pipe with 6 pumping stations, 2 in Uganda and 4 in Tanzania, where 80% of the pipeline will be. The line ends at Tanga with a terminal and jetty, at which point crude oil will be loaded onto tankers. The East African Crude Oil Pipeline enables Uganda to realize the value of its own natural resources and represents a sizable inward investment of almost $4 billion in both Tanzania and Uganda, extending value creation to Tanzania as well. The new corridor connecting the two nations will positively affect the creation of new infrastructure, logistics, technology transfer, and the improvement of the standard of living in nearby areas. Owing to the waxy quality of Lake Albert's crude oil, it will be conveyed via the world's longest heated pipeline. However, just 1/3 of the reserves, which total 6.5 billion barrels and were discovered in 2006, are considered commercially viable. Despite the anticipated economic benefits, the project's implementation has drawn polarized views in Uganda and beyond. The East African Crude Oil Pipeline has been the subject of much debate. About a year ago, the International Energy Agency warned that the development of new fossil fuel projects put the world at risk of failing to reach its climate targets. But the two East African countries, whose paramount goal for the project is economic development for their nations, shrugged it off. Back in September, the European Union addressed the project and demanded that its construction be stopped, citing violations of human rights and concerns for the ecology and the climate. Again, the intervention was rejected by the Ugandan and Tanzanian governments, who consider the pipeline as critical to boosting their economies. President Yoweri Museveni described the European Union legislators as insufferable, shallow, egocentric, and so wrong. As a matter of fact, he might not be the only one who has that impression. Speaking at the Reuters Impact Climate Conference in London, telecoms billionaire and one of Africa's richest entrepreneurs, Mo Ibrahim, who made his fortune in the continent's telecommunications industry, criticized those in the global north for imposing rules on how African nations should utilize their vast natural gas reserves in response to concerns about climate change. John Kerry, the United States climate envoy, issued a warning last month while speaking in Dakar, Senegal, on the margins of an African Environment Ministers' Conference. Kerry's remarks mirrored those made in a report from the International Energy Agency the year before, which warned that such measures would jeopardize the global net zero target of 2050. Some of the reserves held by African governments, some of which are in endangered environments like the Congo Basin, have been discouraged from being drilled by developed nations and civil society organizations. However, as gas prices rise, it is increasingly profitable to utilize the reserves, and foreign corporations, as well as other interested nations like Saudi Arabia and Russia, have been looking into methods to invest in the continent. European Union member states have also entered the game, attempting to replace the fuel they were importing from Russia with gas from Africa. This stinks of double standards given that energy companies have reportedly been considering $100 billion in new energy investments on the continent, according to calculations made by Reuters based on estimates from public and private companies. Mr. Mo Ibrahim.
So thanks everyone for joining today. As I said a couple times, and
Foundation aims to promote good governance and leadership in Africa, thinks it is outrageous that while Europe is currently looking for gas, Africa is not given the same opportunity, which raises the question of whether or not we are not the same people. And although many argue that many Africans in oil-rich countries like Nigeria had not reaped many benefits from their country's oil wealth, Ibrahim counters, claiming that this will not be the case with African gas, because during the Cold War, when corruption was rampant throughout Africa, the environment was favorable for tyrants and criminals, and corrupt actions were simpler to carry out. However, with the changing environment, this is not the case. In his speech to the annual Mo Ibrahim Foundation discussion on climate change, the president of Senegal, Macky Sall, who also serves as the rotating president of the African Union, weighed in on the topic and called for natural gas to be regarded transitional energy. He asserts that Africa must be able to exploit its large gas reserves for another 20 or 30 years to further its development and provide access to electricity to the 600 million people who are still deprived. Africans want to take advantage of the chance to put the fate of the area that has traditionally contributed the least to global warming, while also being the most vulnerable and least developed at the forefront of the discussion. They ask for the right to continue using their fossil fuels, particularly gas, for a number of more decades. In truth, Africa contributes only 2 to 3% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, compared to 17% from European Union countries, but suffers a disproportionate share of the burden. The international community could accomplish much more by cooperating with Africa's hydrocarbon-producing nations, listening to them, and respecting their needs and economic objectives, as opposed to boxing them into a corner and making them accept energy restrictions to which other countries aren't willing to commit. Energy investments amounting to billions may be made in the next years in nations like Namibia, South Africa, Uganda, Kenya, Mozambique, and Tanzania, which currently produce little to no oil and gas. According to the International Energy Agency, by 2030, Africa's gas reserves may be able to replace up to 1/5 of Russia's deliveries to Europe. Importantly, Uganda already receives 92% of its energy from renewable sources, whereas Tanzania receives about 84%. According to the International Renewable Energy Agency, it is about 22% for the European Union. This casts shadows of doubts on many minds and hints at bouts of chauvinism. According to Ellison Karuhanga, a member of Uganda's Chamber of Mines and Petroleum, the European Union's remarks regarding the pipeline are hypocritical. Mr. Karuhanga argues that Uganda cannot wager on analogies with the future of its generations, in contrast to wealthy nations that will continue to be prosperous even after losing their oil and gas revenues. With at least 230,000 barrels per day at its peak and the first oil likely to be discovered in 3 years, Uganda is estimated to earn between $1.5 billion and $3.5 billion annually, or 30 to 75% of its total tax revenue. An estimated $1 billion per year, or at least $12 per barrel, will go to Tanzania. Notwithstanding the anticipated gain, anti-East African crude oil pipeline campaign groups have opposed the project's development, claiming the pipeline will emit 34 million tons of toxic carbon dioxide annually, and also because it travels close to farmlands in the Murchison Falls National Park, which is home to a diverse range of wildlife. According to Ugandan climate activists, the project will only provide wealth to the elite of the nation and transform Uganda into a petrol station for Europe and China. The green energy purists continue to advocate for the country to switch to green energy as it committed to by signing the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015. That is the global plan to prevent temperatures from rising beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels, despite threats of arrest and harassment faced by the East African crude oil pipeline opponents. They debate that creating new avenues for oil and gas extraction and production postpones the transition process, which will result in a tipping point for the environment. Tony Tyehimba, the CEO of the company Renewables in Africa, disputes the clean energy purists, saying that to bring people out of poverty, it is essential that power is stable, reliable, and abundant. He asserts that fossils are very much necessary to achieve this target. According to Tony, wind and solar energy might not be constant. For instance, solar power isn't available at night, and the wind doesn't always blow when you need it. However, people often discuss an energy mix, which is a blend of various sources. All the same, worldwide investments in fossil fuels continue to outstrip those in renewable energy, despite the urgency of the energy transition as outlined in the Paris Agreement. Part of the reason, as explained by Mr. Tyehimba, is the fact that you need to look at who's going to benefit from a project, because you can't really export renewable at this stage, and most of the time, it can only be used locally. According to Tony, you can export oil, but guess who's going to benefit from that? Faye Nagad, a senior advisor on geopolitics and climate diplomacy for the African Climate Foundation, concurs with this statement. She calls the European Union hypocritical while explaining that the necessary funding for the green transformation is not being provided to African nations. Because of this, nations are using fossil fuels to increase their income. According to the senior advisor on geopolitics and climate diplomacy, finance for fossil fuels is currently 3 times greater than that for renewable energy, ranging from $9 billion to $30 billion. Although the East African crude oil pipeline intends to build a refinery in Uganda for internal use, its crude oil will primarily...
If you're a person who's fairly good with numbers and logic, did you
be exported, particularly to Europe, due to the knock-on consequences of the conflict in Ukraine. Although Uganda wants to continue to profit from its oil for many years to come, this may not turn out to be the case. According to Mies Agad, Africa runs the danger of having assets that don't provide a good return on investment in 20, 30, or 40 years, because not only is Europe transitioning, but the entire world is working toward a transformation. And although China presently has the most solar capacity, other major economies like Indonesia are also making the switch. Discussions about how to balance economic development and the fight against climate change will take center stage at the COP27 conference in Egypt this week. Developing country activists have been exerting pressure on wealthy countries to uphold their promise made at COP26 last year to provide urgent funding for climate adaptation and mitigation projects, as well as to make up for the harm and loss they have caused to the environment while developing their own economies. In the instance of the East African crude oil pipeline, there are a number of incomplete concrete homes scattered throughout the area where locals who sold their land were transferred, especially in Chongoleani. They gripe that the payment received was insufficient. Some allegedly put their money into startup companies that later failed. Others claim that as farming became unprofitable, they turned to fishing for income. In the meantime, immigrants from various regions of the nation keep coming to the region in an effort to gain access to the project. Others, as well as perhaps the entire village, believe that the oil pipeline project will help the town recover from lost agricultural income and bring prosperity to the village. If you enjoyed this video, watch also the next video on your screen.
Now you see who was down there. This is what they do. They come into these countries, right, with their climate change and some of the white people. You know, they get black people who, oh, we'll take you out to dinner, we'll put some money in your pocket. They brainwash them against their own interests. You know, like it was said, okay, the one guy Tony was saying that even if you do renewable energy, you can't export that. You're not gonna that the maintenance on renewable energy is costly. You know how much it costs to maintain solar panels, you know, and replace those. And so therefore you need a hybrid of both. You need renewable and you need fossil fuels because it's abundant. And so therefore this is what we're talking about, you know. Europeans basically are doing the most things. Investing in crude oil is a waste of money. How is it a waste of money? I will let you come up here on the show. We put the link up and explain to us how it's a waste of money. You know, it's the
Yeah,
cheapest form of energy. You know, they're repeating
absolutely.
stuff that they basically hear. Oh, climate change is bad and everything. Africa has plenty of oil and natural gas and everything, which give you cheap energy, right? 600 million people don't have constant electricity. So we're supposed to let the whole continent sit with no electricity, be in the 15th century forever, you know, under some freaking climate change nonsense. You
Well, I
know,
mean,
zero emissions by 2050.
wouldn't you push renewable energy if you own all the solar panels and all of the stuff that it
All
costs
right, all
to?
right. The people don't have basic street smarts. If I
So
if I if I manufactured solar panels, I would like the big renewable energy is a big like big tech. You got big tech, you got big farmer, big oil, and you got big renewable energy. They're trying to make money off their stuff. They're trying to be this renewable energy is a come up, you know, and they use in Africa. Oh, you be like this Africa sitting there with no electricity, unreliable, and under some green energy nonsense. You know, okay, well, how about renewable energy? How about hydro plants? No, no, no hydro plants because that makes too much sense. You know, and then even in the renewable energy years ago, I saw that they were attacking hydro plants. Oh, see, the fish can't pass through. You know what they did? They have hydro dams, right, that allows fish and wildlife to flow right through them and everything. But that killed that whole argument. You know what I'm saying? They say, okay, so we got a plant, right, and it has an alleyway where fish or salmon could migrate, and it doesn't damage the environment. That still wasn't enough for these people. You know, so therefore, there's a come up. People have tried to renewable energy has a come up, and the whole thing is to keep Africa poor, backward, independent. You know, in the West forever. You know, do you think Europeans want Africa to be do you depend on Africa selling its own fuel, unlike in Nigeria, right, where it's Western companies like Shell and British Petroleum who are taking the stuff out of the ground. These are Africans exporting the stuff themselves. They don't like that. For example, there is no people say, well, Africa exports oil, Nigeria exports. Nigeria doesn't export oil. Foreign companies come there, drill the oil, take the oil out, and say, "This is what we got." You know, Nigerians don't export the oil themselves. You know, so this is going to be a game changer. Africa drilling its own pipeline and shipping it. You know, that's a game changer. I mean, Uganda could be like Russia. You know, a net gas supplier to the world. You know, and so therefore, this is what we're talking about. And you saw the image of those white people down there. How do I know? They don't even bother trying to hide it. All those white people down there with their green activists, and they got the Africans so gullible with them. You know, same crowd, the LGBTQ, climate change, all this kind of they've infested the African continent, and you got Africans believing this nonsense. You know, it's just sad. You know, you're going against your own thing. You say, "Oh, a few people are going to benefit." What about all those people who are basically saying that, yeah, man, they go and they're getting jobs and stuff like that? Isn't the wealth being transferred to the people? You know, and so it's just they do these red herrings. They say, "Oh, only a few people are going to look at Nigeria and everything." Nigeria is a different situation. That was done during the Cold War when everything was corrupt. Now it's a different thing. You got more educated Africans on the continent. You saw Africans down there in the control rooms and stuff like this. You didn't have that before. In Nigeria, you and these other countries, you had Europeans extracting the stuff and everything like that. They just basically told the Africans, this is what we drilled out. Here's your money right here. That's it. And the Africans had no control over the extraction process. So therefore, this is what we're talking about tonight. I would like for people to understand what we're talking about. We're talking about a change. If we want to see change in the world, and we can't talk about white supremacy and everything, and we fall for the same nonsense. What possible can we be against this move? This is a power move. Africans building a pipeline from one country to another. This is unprecedented. This is unheard of. And Tanzania and Africa and Uganda working together to build a pipeline, hundreds of miles long. That's unprecedented. So the black people, we should be basically like this. Okay, if you're an engineer, microgrids are able to be deployed faster than crude oil. As a vast gasoline for carbon is a goal. Learn from their mistakes. I don't know quite what you're saying. Energy burning fuel creates energy. Energy is used to turn turbines, which produces electricity. That's how electricity is created. Electricity is not created through any other reason, but basically electromagnetism. That's how energy is created. Now, electromagnetism has to be turned. Either it's turned by water, it's turned by steam. It's being turned by steam or water turns electromagnets. Electromagnets, when they're turned, they produce electrodes. Electrodes get turned into get stepped up and turned into wattage. Wattage gets turned into voltage. That's how electricity is created. It's constant. Okay, without electromagnetism has to be turned by something. And one of the easiest ways is through a waterfall. When the water falls on a what do they call one of the spinners, it turns at a rotation. Those rotations turn the electromagnetism. The electromagnetism is copper wrapped with magnets. When the copper turns right around the magnets, it produces electricity. When the electricity, the negative and positive are coppers turned around the two, it produces electricity. And the electricity is basically sent to a transformer, and it transforms the electricity, steps up the voltage. That's how electricity is created. Okay, no other way in the world, not any other way in the world. Without that electromagnetism, you have nothing. So I don't know what she was talking about when she said bio, whatever. I don't know what that is. Okay, electromagnetism is how electricity is created, and so therefore, if you have wind, it can turn. And solar energy produces electricity through heat, and when it goes, when the energy is absorbed, right, it turns electromagnetisms right through the heat, and it produces electricity. But other than that, that's the only way electricity is created. And the easiest way, the cheapest way, right, is through natural gas, which burns. Right, you burn the natural gas, it produces steam, and it turns the electromagnetism, and that creates electricity. This is just that simple, you know. You know, yeah. Nigeria becomes industrialized. Yeah, if Nigeria will become industrialized when it controls its means of producing energy. Right now, it doesn't. So therefore, all the industrialization has to. In order for you to be industrialized, you have to have constant power. You can't have renewable energy. That's not reliable. You can't power cities, factories with renewable energy. That's a supplement. You could have 30%. The goal was having 20% of your energy needs as you grow by renewable energy. want Africa to have 80%, like you look at Uganda, 80% renewable energy. That's a state. That means that the majority of they have no energy for industry, and the majority of people don't have enough electricity under this guise of climate change and all this kind of foolishness. You know, all this foolishness because we have these white people sit there and they come to Africa. I just knew before. I didn't watch the whole video before, but I knew. You got white people out there holding signs. Yeah, crude oil is bad and all this kind of stuff. That it was where was they when the West was digging for crude oil? Where were they when that spill happened in the Gulf of Mexico back in 2009? Where were they at? No place. Now Africa is going to have a come up, but suddenly they act like they care so much. You know, they said we're going to 1 degree, 1 degree of temperature. They're talking about. Zero emissions by 2050. That's impossible. Zero new emissions by 2050. That's impossible. So therefore, if you did get that, Africa will still be suffering in poverty with no energy while they meet some freaking climate change goals. So this is, like I said, this is just foolishness, and we have to basically be mindful of this, and I'm trying to be respectful here tonight because a lot of our people have bought into this foolishness that the West has been pushing. Everyone sees this is hypocrisy. These people are scrambling now. If they were so pissed, why don't when Russia is going through Ukraine, why didn't they say, something? We don't want no raw Russian gas. Let's just use renewable. No, they're not going to do that with themselves. That's not going to happen. They're basically they're ready to throw Ukraine under the bus right now because they're suffering. They want that Russian gas to come back and flowing. So therefore, this is just utter foolishness and nonsense. Yeah, I stand with the presidents of Uganda and Tanzania and what they're trying to do. Hey, you want to put the link in the chat? Man, I want to hear what Jug has to say.
All right, gotcha. I hear some audio in the background. Is that your audio?
Yeah, hold on. That's me outside some rain. I'm outside, it's raining. I'll mute myself. I'm ready, get ready to go upstairs and get on the other thing anyway.
All right, that is cool. And so, family, if anybody wants to join us, that is the link. And the situation that I explained when we're doing these things is there's certain people that you just literally just can't get on the panel with us and things like that because we have a lot of trolls and haters. So if we find out that you're one of them people, we're automatically just going to remove you. This operation that we have is only for people of a Pan-African mindset that understand what we're looking to do in this global Black world. And anyone who doesn't understand that, I'm not here to sit here and answer your questions and things like that. Now, I find that very disrespectful if anyone comes on here and you literally not clear about what we're about and what we're doing, and then you're asking a bunch of ignorant questions, and then and asking us why we're not doing something else when we're doing what we're doing. So those days are over with people like that. And when I see them in the chat room, the goal is to remove them. We have had to progress to where we're working together to build in something versus every minute it's about this negative energy. And that's why I personally just don't even like really dealing with YouTube outside of just doing the business marketing and things that we do, because YouTube is full of fake Pan-Africanists and full of fake Black people that that tend to just play more games than anything else. So those people, I'm looking out for you, and we won't even give you a chance to even ask one question. We're just blocking you immediately. And some of those people, I know who you are already, so I'm always looking out. Greetings, brother Jughead and Big Black. Welcome to the call. And share what you want to share in reference to the topic that we're talking about.
Well, I'll start first. Hey, Jughead. Hey, Bomani. Hey, Kala. Hey, yes,
it seems like a good thing with the whole, Uganda, able to like sell their oil. I guess when I was looking at the video, my question is like, from what I gather, it looks like they'll get like $1 billion or $2 billion a year from the oil. Um, the research, like Russia this year, they they from their resources, their oil, they made like 312 billion or somewhere around that. Uh, I guess my question is for Kala, which I do believe that they need to sell their oil. The whole greenhouse thing is to stop them from doing that. But it seems like they're not getting the best deal on the oil. I don't know if that's maybe because they're letting these same countries that's asking for the oil to build up the machinery or the plants, whatever, to produce it. But I guess my question is, wouldn't it be wise to maybe try to get maybe a deal with other countries to maybe build up those power plants, some type of deal and finagle way to get a better price as far as what they're selling the oil at as of right now?
Remember, they're talking about selling the oil, right, for domestic use first. So in other words, domestic consumption, that's which is good. If you could earn the money, that $6 billion a year domestically, that's good. That's even before they export. So in other words, they're gonna take care of their own energy needs first. Okay. So in other words, basically, that right there will create a multiplier effect. If $6 billion will go to infrastructure, in other words, basically, when they earn that money, right? That's investments they can get. For example, somebody might want to open a car plant there to make car parts or steel. Why? Because they're going to have the energy source. You see what I mean? So it's not just about earning revenue; it's also saving revenue. So that's less oil they got to import and stuff. So in other words, basically, if a country is importing oil and they're spending all this money on the loss of revenue because they have no productivity because they don't have the energy, right? They'll earn $6 billion, right, which will basically create growth in the economy. So that's what they're looking at first. It's not about money because if you export and just make money, you just have paper. But if you have industries being built and capital coming in around the fact that you have abundant supplies of oil and natural gas and everything, you're adding to the capital base of your country. You see what I mean?
Yes.
So therefore, that's basically part of the industrialization process. So it's not just about just revenue, or Russia's an industrialized country. These countries in Uganda don't have the industries. And so therefore, if you're building oil, if you have natural gas, you can start building the plants that could industrialize your country. You're going to need things like steel, iron, and all this stuff like this. Manufacturing. You can't build that if you don't have any energy. Energy is the basis of any sort of growth. You have to have energy. You have to, and solar panels and renewables not going to do it. You have 600 million people on the continent with no constant electricity.
Yeah, I hear you.
600 million people basically don't have any electricity. So the first thing is domestic consumption. Consumption of gas and fuel and electricity by local people. That'll earn billions of dollars right there. And then after you get to a certain point, then you look at exporting. Russia's exporting because it has all domestic. It has all its industry has energy and fuel for its industries. So we're not at that stage yet. Main thing is to get Africa to the point where it's using the cheapest thing to produce electricity, which is fossil fuel. and you could have renewable energy. But look what the chart said. Africa has 80% of its energy is renewable and stuff like this. That's unsustainable because those renewable energies cost money. The solar panels, wind, and everything, you can't export that. But you can export fossil fuels to earn revenue. So
Well, where did
that's what I want to say about that.
Well, excellent, great point, brother.
just where did Nigeria go wrong? Because they're getting their oil right, and do they have plants to their own plants where they're excavating their oil, or are there other countries that's doing that?
Okay, give me 1 second. Let me switch over. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, but overall, I think it's a step towards getting the oil out the ground. I think that's definitely a plus. You know, I I, I just think as far as I just think that they probably need to finagle a way to get more money as far as sales from their oil. As far as that price. But I can understand what Kyle's coming from as far as them making oil. Well, not making oil. Them excavating the oil allows them not to have to depend on other countries for oil, which frees up a lot of money. So that's a great point, take.
Yes, absolutely. And then as far as renewable energy and things like that, those could be additional options. But if you have natural, resources, you want to use that, and because the infrastructure to build, the whole renewable system is going to cost you. So I think that's what Kala's looking at. And I guess naturally, the European nations are going to want you to push certain things because you're going to need to get all of your materials, your supply, and certain things from them. So these people are smart, man. Just like how they set up America, to where everything is built, and all we have to do is just be consumers. And it reminded me of just how the white European Jews operate. They kind of just they look for what you need and they build it, and then that's how they're gonna build their empire and enterprise. So it seemed like everyone is just doing those things, and then ultimately we get indebted to doing these kind of business. So I'm telling folks, we literally have to just watch the game, because these folks are sophisticated, come with suits, ties, briefcases, and a whole bunch of the smooth talking with big words and everything. Next thing you know, your economy is a victim. But yeah, go ahead, Kala. Go ahead, brother.
Okay. About Nigeria. See, the whole thing is this, right? When the Royal Dutch Shell and British discovered oil in Nigeria, right? It wasn't the Nigerians, right? It was European companies, right? They basically went to Nigeria, right? They set up drilling platforms. Initially, right, when they were drilling for oil, they didn't even bother having an office in Nigeria. Then they moved to Port Harcourt, Nigeria, and set up offices. They were just drilling the oil, taking the oil out, right, and just giving the Nigerian paperwork. This is what we did for today, and the Nigerians would get a line of credit or whatever revenues
Greetings, Jughead.
given to.
I guess Jughead want to check for
Bomani.
greetings,
Yeah,
brother.
good.
We can hear you, but it's breaking. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with your audio, but we can't hear you. See if you can work on reconnecting.
Brother, Bomani, hear me? Yeah, so yeah.
Yes, I can barely hear you.
Hey, Jughead, you're gonna have to go out and back in.
Yeah, you may have to try a different internet source or your phone or.
Well,
or
if he
something
goes
else.
back and come back in, he can probably hear him.
It's Brother B. I can't see your name, brother.
Big Black.
Yeah,
But go ahead, Jughead. Go ahead, what you were saying, because I'm trying to. Kala is breaking some stuff down, but if you just want to hold on, we can't hear you now.
Hey,
Kala,
Jughead,
go ahead,
Jughead, you got to go out and come back in.
all right, Kala, we'll get him to work it out. Go ahead and continue.
Okay, so this is what happened in Nigeria. So therefore, there's no such thing as African export.
Yeah, I say great talk.
Yeah, what you call Jughead? You got to. Why don't you disconnect and click on the link back again?
Yeah, the best thing to do is test your audio before you're in. That way, it'll play back. But Kala, go ahead. And
Okay.
everyone else first, please hold. Let me just mute you, Jughead. Go ahead.
Okay.
How are you?
Yeah, Jughead, we can't hear you. Okay.
But also, Jughead, we're talking, and what I try to do is we just need to present. So whatever audio situation you have to have, just check it, and then when you're good, we'll open things up. We'll talk. But Kala, go ahead, and so you can make your point.
Okay. So point I'm trying to make is there's no such thing as an African until now. What I'm seeing is right here is an African exporting anything this on this scale. Okay. In Nigeria, it's not Africans exporting oil; it's Europeans extracting the oil. Okay, that they're coming in and taking the oil out, right, and just paying the Nigerians, or they may partner with them, the Nigerian Petroleum Corporation, whatever. But it's actually the logistics of it is done by Europeans. This right here is actually two countries building a pipeline, which they're going to basically drill the oil, refine it, and then ship it across to two different countries. And both countries are going to be net consumers of this gas and oil, right? And the exports, the excess that they don't consume, they can export to the world market. That's unprecedented. That's something I never thought I would see in my lifetime. Okay, I thought it was something I'll never see in my lifetime. An African country taking something on this scale, pulling it from the ground, right? Consuming it for its own energy needs. And you know what that is? That's sovereignty. You know, when America, a couple of years ago, there was a U.S. companies that want to build a natural gas pipeline going from West Virginia all the way down to South Carolina, right? You don't have no international community saying whatever. The Keystone Pipeline, remember that? The Keystone Pipeline. But Joe Biden gets in office the very first day he's in office, he shuts down the Keystone Pipeline. Okay? A sovereign country could do whatever it wants to do. Okay? Joe Biden shut down the Keystone Pipeline. Why? I have no idea. The climate change nonsense. And so therefore, this is what they're trying to do to Africa. You know, you cannot have energy because of something. Now, not only that, let's look at the other side of this. There's so many scientists that says that climate change is a hoax. It's not real. You know, it's been debunked so many times. But you have these Green New Deal activists, these activists that's pushing this stuff, right? And they have the support of people in Hollywood. They have the support of organizations that go around the world, right? You saw those white people out there. These are white people that basically, I have no idea what their agenda is, but they believe that oil is evil and everything like that, right? But then at the same time, when they're threatened, right, fuel prices are rising. They said diesel right now this winter we're going to have record heating oil prices in the United States, and Europe is going to be hit because of fuel shortages and everything, right? So I'm saying to myself, if Europe doesn't want to be hit by fuel shortages and everything, but they're saying Africa doesn't even have the right to even think about its own energy needs. You're like little children. Don't. And then how they do this is, without even watching the whole video, you know they're gonna get these brainwashed Africans that sit in their colleges and everything. They go out with their white friends and they sip coffee at Starbucks. They talk about how evil the world is and everything right here. Suddenly Museveni is a white man. Suddenly he's an evil elite and all this kind of nonsense and everything. And this is what they do. And so they got Africans gullible. A few years ago, I don't know if anybody remembers this, and we should, Botswana discovered some new diamonds in their own country, right? Now, Botswana has moved from exporting diamonds to making jewelry. And so therefore, Botswana, which was always a model country, model success, right, has basically, and this is what I'm talking about with the left and the right wing, right? It's like a boxing match, right? You have the right wing that hit you with the right, and the left wing hit you with right. They're still getting hit. They started in places like San Francisco with these white liberal weirdos, right? Saying the Botswanan government is going to damage the Bushmen and indigenous Bushmen people. First of all, the indigenous Botswana is more indigenous than the Bushmen are in that area. And they're going to take the Bushman's homeland away, even though the government of Botswana provided housing and education, everything for the Bushmen. They're just mad at the fact that Botswana is going to have enough diamonds to dominate the diamond market and not need them anymore. It's going to be able to cut its own diamonds, make its own jewelry, and market its own diamonds, right, and make all its money. But Botswana, which was once a model country, the West, oh, this is economic miracle, is now being attacked the same way. So in other words, when you start doing things outside of the Western control, suddenly they don't come at you with this direct racism. They come out with you with this, oh, what about conservation? What about the climate and all the stuff like this? And I told people, I've been saying this for months, right? The climate change agenda is all about population control and keeping Africa from developing, right? There was no concern about climate change and stuff like this when the Europeans ruled the world up until like 1945. After World War II, when these countries in Asia started industrializing, developing, suddenly there was this concern about global warming and climate change and population growth and everything. When Europeans were bringing millions of people over here, building factories and everything, nobody had any concern. So what tells me between 1945 and the 1970s, 30 years, there was this epiphany of concern about population and everything. No, it's the fact that the people who are now growing in the world were people who didn't look like them. So now we have this concern about the environment, the climate change, and all stuff like this, you know. And I yield that. I want to hear what other panelists got to say about that.
All right, Big Black or Jughead, either one of you could go.
Yeah, I hear you. I was looking up some stuff. This guy, I think is Muhammad Adal. You ever heard of him? He's one of the guys against this whole move. I think I had it right here, but I just want to know, did you hear anything about this guy? He's basically against the whole move. He's he's out of Kenya, and
What move?
The whole this pipeline, the pipeline from Uganda.
Well, what's his reason? I know Kenya was supposed to be the original destination, but then it went to Tanzania. But suddenly he pops up opposed to it. Why?
He's under the whole climate control thing too.
The climate. The people who do that are paid activists, and these people are not credible. You know, it's the easiest thing to push on black people to say, "Oh, the climate change," but they say, "Well, what are you going to do about energy?" They have no idea. You ask them, "Well, what's your alternative?" They won't give you one. So in other words, they just want to keep things the way they are. You know, why don't he talk about the Chinese taking over running the railways in Kenya because Kenya's defaulting on loans? Why don't he be concerned about that? You know, and so therefore, like I said, the Europeans don't come at you. They always have their surrogates and their puppets doing their bidding for them. Same thing they try to do in Botswana. Oh, the Botswana, they always get their dissidents. You know, these people called professional agitators, professional dissidents, you know, in every country. You know, you got him in Rwanda. You know, okay, what is Paul Kagame doing wrong? No, he just has to go. And so what they do is they go find audience in the West, people who don't like Paul Kagame, watch everything he does. Oh yeah, I agree with you. I was there, and they tried to go a couple of years ago. They tried to say that they was kidnapped by Paul Kagame's secret police and everything, and he's a brutal dictator and all stuff like this. So they get audience with the West and everything to do their bidding. This has been going on for Africa for the longest time, and we got like this. We just got to stop being so gullible. You know, anytime basically you have these professional dissidents, right? You know, for a free meal and lodging, they'll tell you what you want to hear, what the West want to hear. You know, that's the truth. Now, if he has legitimate concerns, right? I like to hear them. You know, if he has legitimate concerns, I'll be like, okay, I can agree with, I can see that. But because the West is against it, right? And he figures, okay, I can make a name for myself, you know, because the West, you know, I can get on headlines, I can get interviews, they can fly me out and everything. You gotta understand how this game is played in Africa. You know, there's no real concrete plan to develop the continent. Everybody's out for their own pockets and their own personal gain. That's all it is. You know, that's why it's hard to take any of these people seriously. Now, one guy on the video, Tony, said he's with renewable energy, but he just like, look, this is not sustainable. You know, we can't we need fossil fuels. We need a both. Even if you said, look, 50-50, 50 renewable, 50 fossil. They don't even want that. It's the whole idea that a black country could do a project like this, right? Right, and do something like this on this scale. This has never been done before. You know, we're going to build a pipeline to basically supply us region with fuel to build power plants and everything like that to make electricity and gas cheaper. So therefore, we could you need gas to for trains, for trucks, for everything. You know, for power, everything. If you don't have that, then the continent is never going to develop. Now, the other thing is, well, like the Malthus said, we'll just have a mass extermination and this solves the problem. People need, what Prince Williams is talking about is Africa needs to reduce its population. If you're going to go that route, Africa is a threat. African development they consider a threat to the world. They won't go to India, who has more people in India with only like not even a fifth of the land space, right? No one's going to India telling them not to develop, not to do anything. It's only countries in Africa, only Africa, because Africa is considered weak.
Correct.
Yeah, but the real thing, brother, China and India is overpopulated, and they need to literally come there and sing that story to them. We have a whole continent. No matter what people say about our continent, we still have at least another 50% of the continent that we can expand into and grow into.
About
China,
7%.
India have no land.
15% of the continent is occupied.
Yeah, I'm just throwing out a figure. It's actually we have more land in that. Because when you even go over countries like Ghana, wherever, you'll see 1 or 2 cities, and then what you see is just rural areas. So I'm telling people that we're not the issue with the planet. You know, is that go to the other people. The Asians have the biggest population, and they have the smallest countries with the biggest populations. Why nobody telling them to reduce their population to do all this foolishness? Because people have no respect for us, and and things like that, and literally look at us as the situation. And what they're also doing, they're not trying, but they're moving in more of their population to a time frame comes. Look at even the whole Caribbean islands. It's populated with Chinese, Indians, and so on. So these people have literally just think they're slick. So we got to catch these folks game on. But go ahead, though, Kala. I know you're breaking it down.
Yeah. So I want to hear what Jughead has to say.
Go ahead, Jughead.
Yeah.
Jughead, you're
good morning. Good morning. So, you can hear me now? You hear me?
A little bit.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. We'll try it. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're honestly expecting you to have good internet connection. You're in the UK. Are you in a dead zone or something?
Yeah. What right now? but I'll keep it short and brief. Yeah, underpopulated. Underpopulated for its size. With the exception of Nigeria, so all this nonsense about Africa as must slow. It's an we have leadership. That's what they're doing it because Africa has no leadership. They have weak, cowardly plantation overseers. That's a problem. So they'll come in outside the UK, take the piss. Our issues are industrialization and controlling our resources, not climates. Carla's right as usual. Become industrialized, protect our border, protect our resources, and become military strong. Develop a space program. That's what we need to focus on. That's what we need to focus on, not climate nonsense. It's an insult.
Yeah, you 100% right. The climate change, I knew this was coming, right? As soon as basically Africa signed out to the Paris Accord in 2015, I don't know what they were signing. It's like I mean to insult my brothers and sisters in Africa, but sometimes you guys skip their free meals. They invite you to Europe, y'all up there with these white people up there, and they give you free banquets and everything, and you sign away your life. Oh yeah, climate, it sounds good and everything. Barack Obama representative was there, if not him there himself. The Paris Climate Accord and all this kind of nonsense. China didn't sign it. China's like, well, the hell with that. We're gonna keep doing what we're doing. We'll keep building coal plants, everything. We're gonna blacken the sky. We're gonna try to develop. We don't care. And China got a loophole because they were so listed, even though they're the number one world's polluter, they're considered not a major industrial nation, even though they've supplied most of the world's industrial. They're still considered a developing country. See, Africa has almost no industries, right? But why is Africa being told to the 2% of the world's emissions, if that? I don't even think it's that. They say 2%. It's probably not even 0.0000%. But Africa is basically made to feel like it has to participate in something that, one, if you really believe the world's being polluted and everything, the number one polluter is China. No one goes after China whatsoever.
Exactly, brother. Exactly. That's what we're talking about. Because the issues are going to be with the countries that have factories and the countries that are well industrialized. Why aren't nobody bothering them?
Yeah, because the bottom line, because they're strong. That's why. China.
And then Africa is the least of the world's problem because, like you mentioned, little to almost no. I mean, if you don't have a bunch of factories, you're not going to have. Like whenever I go to whatever country I go to, the air is fresh and everybody loves this.
That's what comes with strength, bro.
Yes, that's what we love about the African continent. When I go to places like last time I was in London, it was just, I didn't know if it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 o'clock at night, and it was foggy and dark and weird, you know what I mean? And things like that. So we don't have these problems. I'm telling people,
London
follow for the tricks.
London foggy even before the Industrial Revolution. It's just a rainy, foggy city. Why people go there, I have no idea. What do black people see about going to the UK? I don't know. I want to go there one day too, but
yeah, I mean, it's a good place to visit as far as just checking things out. But that's if you have, like, I have family there, so I'll go there and go see my family, and then you go do other things and go do sightseeing and go to the British Museum or something. But yeah, as far as that, I'll just recommend people come straight to Africa because you're gonna get clean air, you're gonna get normal temperatures, and you're gonna get all the things you need to get. But yeah, all of these countries, man, they need to fix their problems and stop pushing off the issue on Africa. Africa is the least of the world's worries as far as climate change or anything like that.
I just think climate change is a hoax. I said this years ago. I was talking about this for like 20-something years. I saw this years ago when 1994, if you guys will remember this, right? They had the World Population Conference in Cairo, Egypt. Jughead, do you remember that? 1994, they had the Cairo, and who was the head of it? Al Gore.
Yes.
Remember that? And then they went into Nigeria, right? There was all this stuff in Nigeria talking about Nigeria was the main target of that climate. They said Nigeria at the time had 120 million people, and they went to Nigeria and with all these programs about birth control and stuff like that. They started giving out free birth control and condoms and everything. It was all in rural Nigeria.
Yeah, I remember. Yes,
They had these rural African women like, why a white man giving me a condom? You know.
I mean, are they doing these things in China and India? Because that's where they really need to do this thing.
Yeah, but they went there. It was in Nigeria, though. You know, they were just giving out condoms. They was giving out those sperm with North
yes, I
plant.
remember.
You remember that, right? And I was saying to myself back
But
then.
man,
Say it again.
yeah. But who was the president? It was your man Abacha then.
No, it wasn't Abacha. It was that Obasanjo.
Obasanjo, gangster.
Obasanjo was president back then, you know. Yeah, so
It was your man Abacha that was allowing it.
Yeah, no, it wasn't Abacha. Abacha came in power just right after that, you know.
It's all these Nigerian president gangsters, man, because they be doing some gangster type tactics, man.
But my whole thing is this though. They're
retarded. They're retarded.
After that, check us out. They kept everything on the news, right? Nigeria, 100 million people, like it was some looming threat. You know, Nigeria is overpopulated. Nigeria this.
Yeah.
Everything on the news, American news. Nigeria, a black country with 100 million people. Wow, this is. I mean, I was like, God damn, you know. They're like, you know, we got to do something about this. You know, they say it out in the open. You know, nobody go to China and say, yo, you got 1 billion people, you know? What y'all doing and everything? They go to black countries, y'all overpopulating. Prince Williams actually said the threat to the world is African population, you know? He said he's going to marry to Meghan Markle, you know? Talk about African population as a threat to the environment.
There's a time. That's what I'm telling people, man. Be careful what these people are telling you. Go ahead, brother. Jughead, go ahead.
You there, Jughead?
Right, sorry, you finish. You continue.
Yeah, well, so that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, brother, your line is just terrible. I'm not sure what's going on, but
so it sounds like this whole talk about climate change.
Yeah, Big Black.
So it sounds like this whole talk about climate change domestically in the U.S. was almost like a smokescreen for controlling, trying to have some control over other countries as far as, you know, industrializing, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, every time if you want a loan or something like that, you got to be signed on to all. That's why they hated China. When China came to Africa, they didn't put all these stipulations, you know, with the World Trade Organization, the World Economic Forum, and everything. China said, okay, you want $10 million? Here it is right here, you know. And so China sidestepped all these protocols, you know. And the West basically uses all this stuff, right? And they'll say, okay, I'm a fair person, right? Me personally, I'm a fair person. I don't see any benefit that the West has had. Let's look at a prototype country, right? That the West, that follow all the West's rules, right? The Congo, regular Congo, DR Congo, and all these countries that basically follow the West's thing, Kenya, and all that. They are in Ghana. Ghana is a prototype country that follows everything the West says, and yet Ghana is going to has to go to the World Bank and IMF for the 18th time, you know, in the last generation, 18 times, more than any other African country combined. You know, going to the thing, they follow all the West's protocols and everything, you know, and so I'm saying, what is the point of all cooperating with the West? You know, why do we have all this stuff? Why do we the trade deals are unequal, unfair? You know, the West gets to manufacture stuff and dump goods back on the African continent. African don't have access to capital because, in other words, for you to build factories, you sold all your. This is what they did. If you, they have credits, right? If you don't use, you're allowed to have a certain amount of emissions that you use, right? If African countries don't have any industries in the first place, what they do is take their share of the emissions credit, right, and sell them to another industrialized country like China or whatever, and they say, okay, you sold your emissions credit. Now you want to go build a plant. You can't do that because that plant is estimated to emit a certain amount of emissions, and you already sold your energy credits to another country. So it doesn't solve anything. So basically, you're back to square one. You can't build a plant now because you are going to, you don't have any emissions credit to do that. You see how this works?
Yeah.
So all the industries and everything stays in the developed world. Developing countries never develop because they took that money that they say, well, how do you stop them? It's simple. No international banks or funding will fund your project because you don't have any emissions credit. You see how this works?
Yeah.
You see how this is like this platform right here with me and Bomani are the only place you're going to hear stuff like this?
Yeah.
Because other people don't do their homework before they get online and start talking about Africa. There's more to it than Africa than going on vacation and stuff like this. There's a lot to this continent. If you're really serious about building Africa, you need to know all this. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on. The sanctions that's on Zimbabwe, the looming sanctions against South Africa if somebody like Malema ever gets the power and everything. There's a lot going on in the continent, right? There's a lot of hands in the cookie jar. You know, these people have not given up. You know, there's stuff. They got all kinds of tricks and ways to keep us thing. Now, what I can say is this: the problem is the black political class in America are completely signed on to this nonsense. You know, they give us people like Stacey Abrams, right? You know, all this left thing. When did being black become symbolic of being a leftist lunatic, a climate change? Like, you ever see some of these black people, oh, the climate. Okay, when the gas price, oh man, why are my gas prices so high? Because you dumbass, you voted for a man that shut down all the drilling and everything like that, and that's why gas prices are rising. You stupid idiot. You know. So this is what we have in Black America. You know, we don't see the danger and all the stuff we do. It feels good.
Correct, Carl. And essentially Russia.
Yeah, Jugget. To be honest with you, brother, we can't. We have to do something else. Your connection is not working good, and
We definitely want to hear you tonight, man. But somehow, man, internet's not working. Hey, Jughead, can you call? Are you on a laptop or your cell phone?
My laptop.
Your laptop. You might want to call from your cell phone. See if that works. You might want to use your data instead of the Wi-Fi because something's not working. We definitely want to hear from you tonight. You know.
And then other thing I would say it would be probably a mic.
It's probably the mic.
The
mic on the phone's probably better.
Yeah, so what you may have to do is just get one of those external joints.
But how much should I call?
Get something like this and just connect it to your laptop, and that's the best thing I could recommend for anyone with their desktop or laptop. Just get you a nice external mic, and you're good. Beyond that, the phone microphone usually works good. So see what you can work on, brother. But Kala, go ahead so we can keep.
Yeah. So basically, this is what we're talking about tonight. You know, we're talking about. You saw the video. You know, I'm saying to myself, two countries building a pipeline and saying we're going to build a pipeline to export oil and gas and natural gas, right? To explore it first and use it and, store it. So we have plenty of energy needs that we need. and then we could build industries around those industries and give everybody access to cheap, affordable electricity. And then basically you could say, let's build some renewable stuff and to add on to the grid and stuff like this. That's for it. But when you have a country that's struggling, right, paying for all this expensive renewable energy, that 85% of people, and you don't have enough energy for industries. You can't build factories with wind power and solar power. You can't do it. It's just not feasible. Everybody knows that. And you can't produce anything with that, but you can basically produce electricity and fuel with fossil fuels, which is abundant. If Uganda has discovered billions and billions of barrels of oil, you know how much oil that is? That's billions of oil for decades. That you could basically sell to the world if you need to. The export. That's even before you get into the capacity. Before you get to capacity, you got to have consumption. It's always this old saying: produce what you consume and consume what you produce. Too much of Africa has basically been about discovering stuff that they can sell to the West. What they're talking about is for domestic energy needs. Okay, that's unheard of. An African doing a major project for its own use. That's never been heard of before. We need this for our own consumption, and we're going to drill it, and we have it. So in other words, basically, it's not going towards the West initially, right? It's not a Western company coming in saying we discovered oil and we're going to suck the oil out and everything. So miss me with that nonsense. Well, people say, it's a one country producing oil for two countries to use, and then basically they talk about other countries doing the same thing. Mozambique and other countries doing the same thing. Why? Because these countries want to develop. And they're basically scrapping this climate change nonsense. And so this is what we're talking about. But we're getting blowback right now from people who are misguided, in our own communities. But, oh man, we can't do this and everything. Somebody said most YouTubers show Africa as a tourist adventure destination. Nothing on geopolitical analysis. You have to know your stuff, folks, especially it's about. Yeah, that's the truth, though. This is Africa is not Disneyland. Everybody wants to be on an African safari. This is not Disneyland. This is the real world here. At any time, one of these countries could be engulfed in civil war. But when countries start developing, right, and they got a future, it's less likely you're going to have something break down because people see their lives improving. You can't keep going to a continent, right, and showing people on camera in poverty and misery, talking about how great Africa is. It's not going to work.
Is people doing that for real? Serious?
Yeah, people out there. Yeah, and also, I was talking to one of my guys that went to Liberia. Talking about Liberians look so angry. No, it's like Liberians don't like people filming them without their consent. I learned that when I went over there with my camera. They're like, don't put me on camera. I said, okay, I'm not gonna I don't want to see myself on YouTube. That's what they say. I don't want to see myself on Facebook or YouTube. They don't like that. They like their privacy. They like being left alone. So they're not gonna. They don't want to be in your on your YouTube channel, ask them questions and stuff like that. So you'll see that. I haven't been to other parts of Africa, but I know that's how they are over there. So I respect that. If I give people money, something like that, somebody struggling, I didn't put it on camera and say, "Look what I did. Look at me. Look at me. I'm giving to the poor." I don't do that. I give them let people have their dignity and with their respect. It's off camera, and so you got to respect that. And so therefore, like I said, it's not a safari. You're dealing with real people. Real people. And if you don't understand that, you're gonna find that out real soon. That this place is real. You could lose your life. This is really dealing with real people here. I'm in the motherland. My motherland, man, is suffering. For example, let me give you an example. What's going on in Cameroon, right? I have not only heard African Millennial talk about this topic, right? What's going on in Cameroon, or Northern Cameroon, Western Cameroon, with the Amazonian situation, right? You have a people that's being killed by the thousands as we speak, right? Because they tired of being oppressed by the French-backed government in Cameroon. And this place is called, they call this area Ambazonia. But no one's talking about that. No one's talking about that. Why? Because it doesn't, your fantasy about Africa. If you basically love the continent like we do, you got to look at the good and the bad and the ugly. And also, like I said, this topic tonight is not fun, because we've been taught that oil and fossil fuels is bad and everything. But you got this president, Museveni, and the president of Tanzania, who, and many people in these countries looked at it and say, we need to do this. So why can't we respect that and say, you know something? Maybe they know what's best for their country. But what do we see in the video? We see these same Negropeans who are out there with their white friends. These white people always got this love for us and everything. They come in Africa, and they hang around and everything under this banner of climate change and all this stuff like that. And it's all mixed in with the LGBTQ, the human rights, and all this kind of stuff like this. They're using human rights and all this nonsense to weaponize against us. We're trying to build something for the future, and this is just a tipping thing. Wait till Africans start basically modernizing their fishing industry. Right now it's okay for the Vietnamese and Chinese to rob Africa's fishing grounds and sell Africa back its own fish. Wait till Africans start building fish. Suddenly there's not enough fish in the world. Suddenly Africans are gonna. Look, it's like, bro, I could write a book. I can predict the future. If you know patterns, it's not, these people are not smart. They go by the same playbook, century after century. When Africa starts saying, you know something, we're not going canoes, we're going to use motorized craft, and we're going to be have those big giant fishing things, and we're going to basically get into the fishing industry and everything, and we're going to start impounding illegal fishing off our coast. We're going to take control of fish. Suddenly, on the New York Times, Africans exploiting the oceans, their own territorial waters. Look at the environment and all this kind of stuff like this. I just need our people to be smarter. And because a lot of us in the Pan-African movement, not me, Bomani and else, are lazy. We don't like work or anything like that. Well, I want to ask you something, right? How do you expect to have prosperity? Look at all these beautiful African cities and all like that. It's going to take hard work. Those buildings you see has steel in them. Where does steel come from? If you have no steel industry, right, but you like looking at a tall building, look at this tall building. Yet all the steel is made in Europe because you have not developed a steel industry on the continent. And that's why Africa is in so much debt, because of the basic things, right? If you basically if you have natural resources and you're not using them for your own use, it's useless. If you have iron ore, right, and you're letting foreign companies take your iron ore out, right, and you got to import steel back from them instead of making iron ore for yourself and then building your own steel industry, so you can have. So instead of you paying one price, it's like a fraction of the cost. And then you could develop. And you're not carrying any external debt. Africa, because of what I'm talking about, right? Africa loses it has $120 billion invested in Africa a year. But Africa loses $130 billion. So as capital and everything comes in, it all leaves. So this is why we say, well, people say Africa rises. Africa is not rising until the trajectory changes, right? And like I said, this pipeline is just one thing. If we win this with this pipeline and stave off the EU and everything, other people, like in the Congo basically kicked the Chinese out, and they want to start mining and processing its minerals itself. That's what Mr. Rosenthal was talking about a couple of weeks ago. Why are we letting these people come in and take our gold and everything like that, giving us their worthless paper? We want to put the gold and and hedge it in our own banks. These are the things that's going to basically make us, as a race, prosper. This is So this is what we're talking about tonight, folks. Nothing else. We're just talking about just common sense.
Yes, absolutely. So for those who want to join us, the link is below. You can join us, and let's stick to the subject and stick to the situation. And beyond that, we can't keep it too long tonight. We've been doing too many long shows because we do have a whole lot of work to do as a people. But so yeah, looking for some people to share something based on what we've been talking about.
Big Black, do you understand where I'm coming from, though?
Oh, definitely, definitely. Learning a lot from you, man. Basically, and big ups to Uganda. It was that Tanzania
Mm-hmm.
for the foresight. You know, that the foresight of looking at. There must have been some foresight in the intelligentsia of some of the people in particular positions in Uganda and Tanzania, as far as looking at the war, right? The war that's going on right now with Ukraine and seeing big opportunity and knowing that, hey, pretty soon, uh, you know, they're going to try to stop buying oil from Russia.
Yes.
And seeing that. So that's some strategies that I haven't looked at. Just learning. I'm learning a lot from you. As far as politics and world strategies. What do you think about those like wind farms?
Well, let me tell you something. So what happened down in Texas, right?
No.
Okay, Texas last year, those wind pipes froze.
Yeah.
And the grid was frozen, producing no electricity. You had people with hot water heaters bursted, below zero weather, freezing. People died in Texas last year. The media don't
Right.
talk about it because just like California is going through problems with this so-called renewable energy, they're having freaking rolling blackouts. That's something you have in third world countries. So all this nonsense, it sounds good, right? Renewable energy, save the planet, right? But these people that do this stuff are people trying to do a come up. These people make these wind turbines, and all that. The wind turbines, those things catch on fire a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The maintenance on those things are incredible. The maintenance, those things break down all the time. When they break down, the grid goes down. Same thing with solar. You put solar panels, it's going to last for like 10 years. You got to replace that thing. And
Absolutely.
then when the solar panel's done, what do you do with that? That's like it's made from fossil fuels a lot of times, right? You got to throw it away. That's a danger to the environment, disposing those things. But they don't talk about that.
No, they don't. Mm-hmm.
Because it sounds good, if you put solar panels on your house, right now in America, my brother got solar panels on his house, right? And I'm waiting to see if he's gonna bend. He saw his panels. He's so bent on solar panels. He got these solar panels on his house, right? And I'm like, and the way he explained to me, like, oh yeah, in a few years, I'll do like that. Ain't a whole lot of money for them stupid looking things on your house, man. Yeah. Bottom line is this: you ain't getting away from paying that light bill. The black man has been trying to get away from paying that light bill for a century and a half now. It's like this: are you going out to the march tomorrow? No, man. My wife told me that light bill due. I better get to work. That light bill is serious business. It's serious business. You got to pay that light bill. And that's what it is. You got to pay that gas man. The gas man ain't want to hear that. You got to pay to keep that stuff on. There's no silver bullet as far as like energy. It costs. And so I'm saying like this now, when we talk about renewable energy and stuff like that, sustainable energy, there's geothermal. Nobody talks about that. Nuclear energy is probably the best form of energy. You know what nuclear energy is, right? When you take like let's say a metric ton of plutonium or uranium, right? and you enrich it, right? You break it all down, right? It comes up into a ball like the size of a grapefruit, right? And when it goes into the reactor, it's radioactive. That thing will last 30 years. One little thing of uranium that's enriched, right? And what happens is when the uranium is enriched, it produces heat, like hotter than the sun. Okay, that heat, right, goes into heats condensed water. That water produces steam. Steam produces the turbines, right? The turbines turns the electromagnetism, right? The electromagnetism produces electricity. And with that, it's because the heat is constant, you got constant flow of electricity. Now the problem with coal is coal burns. You got to keep putting coal in there; it burns. You got to use a lot of it. But nuclear energy, right? One metric ton of uranium that's enriched, right, produces a little ball like the size of this, goes into a reactor and produces a radioactive. And same thing with the hydrogen, plutonium, right? And it stays hot forever. So you don't have to burn coal. The radioactive, the enriched uranium stays hot forever. And so therefore that produces heat. And heat with water produces steam. And steam and combustible steam is how electricity is produced. It's very simple mechanics. Geothermal is you stick something, a tube, a pipe deep into the Earth's core where it's real hot. That heat, right, rises through the tube, through the pipe, right, and it heats water up, right, creates pressure, and it turns the turbine. You always have to in order to produce electricity, you have to have force, energy. Either it's water dropping from a hydro dam, or steam, or it's gas, or natural gas. Wind turbine turns electromagnetism and everything. But what happens when the wind dies? It stops producing.
Okay, makes sense.
See? So therefore, the easiest way Africa is nuclear, and Paul Kagame is trying to build a nuclear plant. They don't like that, right? Nuclear energy will produce enough energy, right? Cheap, affordable electricity for generations. Look at, for example, Cyril Ramaphosa met with Biden, and he assured Biden that he would shut down his coal plants in South Africa. Eskom energy company in South Africa is black owned. Basically, asked Cyril Ramaphosa, why didn't you make that promise to Biden? In a couple of years, they're going to get rid of their coal. Why? Why? You got this senile old man, 80 years old, going around with this completely bought into this climate nonsense. Let's be honest with ourselves. Biden never liked the oil industry because he comes from a working class, moronic community that hated the fat cats the kids that were rich because their daddy worked in the oil and the fracking industry and everything, and he never got a taste of that life. So he was always bitter. I'm working class. No, you're a loser, working class white guy who's angry about everything. And so therefore you had it out for the oil industry your whole life. And they make us hate the oil industry. Oh, those rich, evil oil guys. What about the black people that's got into the oil industry last century and got rich? Those black people who drilled oil in Texas and Oklahoma and got rich. What are we supposed to do? You could discover oil in your land, and there was one black girl in the 19. I don't know if you heard her story. She was said the richest girl in America. She inherited some land in Oklahoma, and if I had oil in it, she got rich. That was like in the late 1900s. I forgot her name.
Wow.
So we're supposed to do? Oh, she was evil because she owned oil and everything. See if I can find this girl. Let me see if I can find this richest black girl. Okay, here it is right here. Okay, her name was Sarah Rector, Kansas City, Missouri. She 1919. You know, she inherited a worthless plot of land, but she became rich because they discovered oil on it. You know. Her name was Sarah Reddick. So all this history is buried from us because people don't want to read our history. So this is what we're talking about tonight, folks. Now, I'm not here to be some guy over oil industry, but I'm saying while the white man is getting rich, these guys making billions and billions of dollars on oil. Remember the Enron situation, a couple of decades ago?
Yeah.
These guys rich billions and billions of dollars, but suddenly when the black man decides, you know something, we got oil, let's develop ourselves and make some money and everything. Suddenly, the climate and all the stuff like this. You know what the Enron people thought about that climate? They're like, get out of here. But when it comes to the black man, we got people out here, we shouldn't be doing that. The climate change. 2050, let's say if they get to this zero emission, you think Africa is going to develop? No. Do we even care about Africa developing? All you Africa-bound people, you don't care about the continent not developing? If the continent not developed, you think another generation of kids are going to live in poverty without there being some major upheaval and war on the continent? You are sadly mistaken. These kids in Africa ain't like before. They got the internet. They see how people living overseas and everything, and they're living. They're born in poverty and dying in poverty. You think they really care about your climate change nonsense? These are the things we're talking about when we talk about the Pan-African world. We have to build Africa. We're going to be building Africa. We have to build African infrastructure. We have to stand behind people who are trying to build African infrastructure, Black African infrastructure. And that's why I said, Tokawani, this topic was very, very important to me. I had to talk about this. I couldn't wait a couple of weeks.
All right, cool, perfect, excellent. So I'm not sure if anybody else want to get on and things like that, but if not, we can start wrapping it up. We're over 2 hours.
Yeah, I think we said enough,
One more question.
Yeah, go ahead, bro.
That how you explained the whole nuclear energy, and I heard you. I was hearing you before earlier talk about as far as like the water that a lot of water that's in Africa, period. With the rivers and things of that sort. Couldn't nuclear energy be used to clean up certain water supplies in Africa, where I guess we as far as create an industry where the water could be sold?
Yeah, Africa has enough water. Not only does Africa have rivers, right? In the Kalahari Desert, right? They said there's billions and billions of cubic feet of water underneath the Kalahari Desert that's waiting to be tapped. Enough water basically to supply the world. There's plenty of opportunity as far as water harvesting, water storage and everything. Water is probably the most precious resource you can have. When you have water farms and water tanks and water transport and everything like that, water pipelines and everything, you're talking about an abundance of wealth. You need water and you need energy to develop. And Africa has plenty of it, it's just not developed. So, and also not only that, the Congo River and the Zambezi, right? All these rivers right here, there's enough water overflow in these countries, right? Where you could green the Sahara Desert. There's projects like that. Gaddafi created aqueducts, rivers in the desert, in the Sahara Desert. People thought he was building a nuclear reactor. He was actually building a thing where he was greening the Sahara Desert, and created farmland out of the desert by building canals and streams and everything like this. But the West, if they were so concerned about this, right? How come they don't get under that? When I was with the Shiloh Science Institute back in the 90s as a young man, right? I learned about all these projects, and they said the West. They said, wow, this is great, right? And they said, well, look, the science community is so politicized. The world science that the world looks at, right, was at the time was telling us that, oh, we need to reduce population, the world's overpopulated, and everything like that. So all the science that was designed to help, there's a lot of scientists that have a lot of things. Even let me give you another example. I studied what they call smart cities, right, back then. There's cities like Walt Disney was part of that, right? Where you could build sustainable cities, right? Modern futuristic cities, right? Where you don't have a lot of cars, you don't have a lot of stuff, and people live in a grid-like environment and everything. They got shopping centers, everything, right? And they got all-contained city, right? Where people got nice, spacious places to live, everything like that in an area where you don't have to have a lot of highways and traffic and everything like that, because everything flows in. You have lane terminals that they showed where monorails will bring in crates, carts, and trucks. Instead of having trucks, you have monorails bringing stuff in and stuff like that and distributing to grocery stores and everything. They designed these cities decades ago. They said this is the way we should be. If you want to complain about the environment and everything like that, why have a commuter class of work? Why not have monorails and light rail and stuff like this, and smaller cars and more efficient highway systems and everything like that, instead of having suburban sprawl? But all these things, right, that were ignored. Why? Because they want to push this idea that the world's being overpopulated. We got to reduce population. So I've been at this for decades now. And now it's coming to a thing. I thought this would die out. I thought people would pick up that this was just nothing but a hoax. It's climate change and all this nonsense hoax. But people are buying into it. And I asked, in Africa, instead of Ghana trying to pattern itself after the UK, why wasn't it building these smarts the same city? Ghana could basically build cities, right? It could have been like 10 cities, right? Could have raised the standard of living of everybody in the country, gave everybody a modern apartment or house or whatever like that on the grid, and none of this stuff that they're going through right now.
Yeah, wasn't the NBA in the back in COVID, right? And they were still playing some games, but weren't they like in a smart city where they were playing?
Well, I don't even know. I wasn't even
I
paying
know
attention.
everything was contained, and then one of the players got fined for leaving. I think it was leaving the city or something, got fined, but I don't know, something.
Well,
Someone
maybe they were doing stuff like that, indoor stuff, arenas, stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know if that connects to this, but the smart cities things are maintained city or smart cities where people live in like condominiums and stuff like that, and they have shopping centers in close walking proximity. It's very pedestrian friendly and stuff like that. You have monorails here and stuff like that, trolleys and streetcars and stuff like that, as opposed to a lot of cars, and also buses that flow above traffic and everything like that. So these smart cities are very, very efficient, but they said most people don't like that because it's too controlled. But that's much better than what we have right now, where you got 80% of the world don't even have indoor plumbing or anything like that. The world could have built these smart cities, and everybody that had these city designs and everything, because I got a lot of videos of them, they wrote them off as crazy. Oh, the world wants to live like that. But guess who's doing it now? Asia. Asia's building these futuristic cities and saying, well, a lot of people don't need backyards, right? People living in comfortable houses. Look at Singapore. People living in condominiums with 2 floors, houses, everything. And people, instead of like in America where we have backyards and everything, they spend most of their time on the streets or in shops and everything. And their socialization process is better because people are getting to know each other. They're outside of the house. They're not sitting in the house all the time. So therefore, this lifestyle that we emulate in the West, some people like it, right? But I'm saying to myself, if you start building these smart cities, which you expand vertically, in other words, basically people living in apartments, right? Luxury apartments, as opposed to, just single family homes and everything. you know, which was a product of post-World War II, the boom in America, the suburban life and everything. We like the suburban life in America, right? But I'm talking about as far as developing Africa, maybe you have to look at something else. You know, I believe in modernity with modesty. You know, modesty. You know, you basically have, I believe in light rail and monorail systems and stuff like this. You know, and the new futuristic urban lifestyle. You know, indoor domes type cities and everything like that. All that's all that was in the plan of future, but they said, you know, the future never came. There's many different problems we can solve. Let me give you an example. The state of Israel said that it had a water crisis, right? They took a iceberg, right? Brung it to Israel, right? And basically got millions and millions of gallons of water from this ice, this big block of ice. Also, desalinization. That's another thing people don't talk about. You know what desalinization is? It's removing the salt from the ocean and creating it into fresh water. That's called desalinization. There's desalinization plants in several countries. I think Senegal was, or Sierra Leone, one of those countries was experiment with desalinization. You know, which are taking salt water, which is abundant, right? And what they do is remove the salt, right? Purify, remove the salt, and create fresh water. So it's like, oh, the world's don't have enough water and everything like that. Well, the ocean is plentiful. You're never going to run out of water in the ocean. You know? So there's all kinds of things, right? And I just want the Pan-African world to start thinking outside the box, because that's how we're going to save the continent. By being smart and looking at science to solve problems. You know,
Yeah,
this is why we're talking about this tonight. I just want to raise the bar in our talk about the Pan-African world. It's not all fun and games when you talk about the continent, you know? You know, it's not all fun and games, you know? Smooth, these guys only want to hear themselves talk. Well, get up here. If you don't, why do people come on here? You know, all these guys want to talk. We're here discussing something. If you have something to add to the conversation, if you have something intelligent, come up here and discuss it with us, you know?
Now, these are some of the trolls. I already put this clown on timeout. You know, that's what they do. They just come on our show and literally, and it just makes no sense. You know, literally just listening to us and, you know, just having their issues. I'm like, yo, this is what we're working on. What are you guys working on? None of them is ever able to tell us anything. So I just give them the general label, trolls and haters. 40, 50-year-old virgins in their mama's basement who don't have any careers, don't have any life, just playing around on their keyboard and creating a whole bunch of different you know, accounts. And you know, when you see them, we just block them. But it's a sad situation. We talk about real situations, solving real problems, and really just organizing our people to the highest level to where we can compete. And people have an issue with that. So I tell them, you know, the issue is with you. You know, issue is with you. So the people who you believe in, these people who believe what they believe in, the quickest thing I can explain to them is get with the rest of the losers that you know, and then go ahead and see if you can get anything accomplished. Because that's all we're showing people, what we're working on, what we're building, what we're doing, and just connecting people to open their minds up to the future of Africa. So telling people if they want to stay here and play games and hope that things are going to change for Black people is not going to change. So stay out of our way and let us do what we need to do and be thankful and show love and respect, show homage to the kings of Pan-Africanism that are actually doing it, not people who label themselves these names or people who go around who do all kind of talking and things like that. It's a bunch of them out there, but we're not those people.
Yeah, and these are the type of discussions we need to start having. As far as like, if people are serious about Africa and building Africa, these are the types of things we're trying to talk about, you know? And I'm saying to myself, we got to start reaching out to these African journalists, because these African journalists are on point. You know, they watching this stuff and everything. And I don't know if they're Pan-Africans or not, but they seem to have the continent's best interests at heart. You know, there's a lot of stuff, because a lot of times they labeled us as racist and Black radicals and everything, but they see all these years that we were telling the truth. And
Absolutely.
Question: why is it? Let's say if you don't believe in white people are bad or black people or whatever, why is it that one group or one race of people have everything, and the other race of people have nothing? You know, why is that? Why is there one people on top? Why does one group of people get to tell another race of people what to do? Does that sound fair? How does China could solve its own problems? Do you think Mao Zedong and all these people cared about what the West thought? No, they're gonna take that's what it means to be free, where you can make the decision for yourself. Say this is for our own best interest. Without any consideration. When you do that, you're labeled a dictator or tyrant, right? And what's sad is you get your own people who's supposed to have your back, right, going against you. Oh, it's my time. They see the West piling on, so it's my time to get in here and get my little digs in. Let me go over here and say like they're gonna rise at the top. And we're telling those type of people no more, no more. Like I said, this right here that we present tonight, right, is a legitimate a thing, but it's not being discussed in Pan-African circles. This is going to be the next Zimbabwe. It's going to be the next the Ethiopian dam crisis.
One more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
One more question, Kala. What do you think about PLO Lumumba? You ever heard of him?
PLO Lumumba. Thing is, I like the guy, man, but the whole thing is, he says Africa goes like this. The bottom line, he's like talking and talking and talking, and nothing ever gets moved. Because why? The people in power, he has no power. And you could talk all that. Why is Africa? He sounds impassionate, but the thing is, he has no power. He has no power. And not one country, and that shows you what we're up against, right? There's people, Africa's want to do their best, right? But he's talking about a mentality in Africa that allows this stuff to get here to the crisis in the first place. We cannot basically keep relying on Europeans for loans and relying on them for everything, sending our kids to their schools. And it's embarrassing when I saw all those Africans in Ukraine. What the hell is Africans doing in Ukraine? Ukraine is a developing country its damn self, What does Ukraine have? What can they teach you that you can't build an institution yourself and teach yourself? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we say all that, right? And here's the problem with our brothers and sisters in Africa, right? Africa, unfortunately, right, got pushed into the modern world, right, without paying its dues. Without paying its dues. So in other words, basically, these countries, for the most part, were built by Europeans. The economic systems were built by Europeans to benefit Europeans. So therefore, there's never been an Africa for the Africans. The military in Africa is there to protect European interests. The governments in Africa are there to protect Western interests and what they have left over on the continent. Until that paradigm changes, until Africa has its own industries, until it has its own things like pipelines and stuff like this that they're benefiting from, that they're profiting from, that is theirs, and it's their lifeblood and everything, that they have something to lose, right? That they built themselves. It's always going to be like that. You can't have a continent where you're just a spectator and keep being angry about it. Too many Africans are spectators in their own continent. And so as long as that's the case, right, and we just have people on the number, but if we don't have a Black African infrastructure, global Black African infrastructure, and Black businesses and industries that are financing each other, and African trade with each other and stuff like that, where we could develop the continent without European help, as long as basically Africa is always seen as needy and helpful and everything, that's the way it's going to be. Because most Africans are resigned to the fact that they need China, they need Europe or whatever to develop. So therefore, They just resigned to the fact, hey, look, it is the way it is. So Malone can talk all he wants, but he's not talking to a free people. When Africa breaks free of those shackles of colonialism, then you could say, okay, look, we need to do this. And it'll happen organically. Because like, okay, what do we need the Westerners for? We got our own engineers, we got our own scientists, we got our own everything. We don't need an outside world. But as long as Africa keeps relying on the outside world, like let me ask you a question. Has any African country said, you know something, we studied climate change and also like that, we came to the conclusion that this is right? No. It's Europeans came up with this stuff, climate change, global warming, everything, and they imposed it on Africa through fiat, through the media. You saw the video. All these white people down there, what do you think they're there for? They're going around spreading out pamphlets saying this is climate change, this is evil, and they got Africans hooked on this stuff. That stuff didn't originate in Africa. So you can't have everything coming from Europe, or your whole thought process, and then and then get angry when Africans act the way they do. They don't know. Africans don't know themselves. They don't know what's right, what's in our best interest. That's why I'm glad President Museveni said, "This is what we're going to do," and the West is attacking them for it. That's why I'm glad we got men like Paul Kagame. I'm doing what's best for my country. But instead of getting behind men like that, we want to sit here on social media, even if we're not talking about stupid nonsense and everything, we're basically, oh yeah, he's this. Look, it's time that we get behind men that are strong. You know, that's my opinion on that.
Well, appreciate it, Kala. Appreciate your Big Black. Let's work to this, wrap it up. And so, family, thanks for joining us, and close out with some music and give you a nice energy from our website, africafortheafricans.org, where we have all of our Africa tours and our Black Star Pan-African community information right there on the website. And there's some nice music and a nice slideshow. So let me give you some music, and then we'll close out, family. And just stay tuned. We'll keep you posted on what we're working on in the future as time go along and everything. And the reality of it is, you're looking to do anything, just reach out to us and connect with us, because we need to see who's serious and who actually want to do certain things. And if people just want to listen to the program, that's fine. All right, Sons of Africa.
Sons of Africa, shining bright. It was the year 1957. The African Republic of Ghana regained her independence from colonial forces under the careful leadership of the Honorable Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Blessed by His Imperial Majesty, Haile Selassie, Kadamawi, Kadamawi, Kadamawi. Hey, hey!
Return to the roots. Come get your truths and your blessing, blessing. Son, go forward. A message and a lesson. Return to the roots. Come get your truths and your blessing, blessing. United we stand, and we standing strong. From the examples of Ghana, got to be working together. Black star, black generation. Ice, gold and green. Life, color, life, liberation. Black and Adinkras. Symbols from creation. It was a sun, go forward. A message and a lesson, lesson. Return to the roots. Come get your truth and your blessing, blessing. Son, go forward. A message and a lesson. Return to the roots. Come get your truth and your blessing, blessing. Return to your roots and get your blessing. Return to your roots and get your blessing, blessing. Return to the roots and get your blessing. Return to the roots and get your blessing. The call and response. Rhythms of Jimbe and Kete. Sounding far and distance. Regenerating vibration. From corner to curb. The million voices are heard. It was a sun, hope for bird. A message and a lesson. Return to the roots. Come get your truths and your blessing, blessing. Sun, hope for bird. A message and a lesson. Return to the roots. Come get your truths and your blessing, blessing. Return to your roots and get your blessing. Return to your roots and get your blessing. Return to the roots and get your blessing. You must return to your roots and get your blessing, blessing. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. Stand, go forward. A message and a lesson, lesson. Return to the roots. Come get your truths and your blessing, blessing. Son.